Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel to a world of rigid rules, unspoken codes, and suffocating etiquette. We are stepping into the tightly corseted life of a respectable lady in 1850s Victorian London to experience a single day where every gesture, every word, and every choice of clothing is a high-stakes performance. You find yourself waking in a grand, cold bedroom, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke, your day already scheduled down to the minute. If your morning routine involves hitting snooze 5 times and then doom scrolling for 20 minutes, the rigidly scheduled and highly orchestrated Victorian morning might come as a bit of a shock. You're not just waking up, you're commencing a day-long performance. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love seeing our little community grow, so feel free to post your location and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day begins not with the gentle chime of an alarm, but with the slow, creeping realization of cold. You are cocooned in a mountain of heavy linen sheets and woolen blankets, but the chill of the London morning has found its way deep into the room, a damp and penetrating cold that seems to emanate from the very walls. You open your eyes. The world is a deep and profound darkness, shielded from the city by thick, velvet curtains, drawn tightly to block out the night's foul air and noise. You can see your own breath, a pale, ghostly plume in the frigid air. You are wearing a flannel nightgown, a sensible and entirely unromantic garment with a high collar and long sleeves buttoned right up to your chin. Every inch of your skin is protected from the cold, a necessary measure in a house without central heating, where the only warmth comes from fireplaces that have long since died to cold ash during the night. Before you see the city, you can smell it. A faint, acrid, and unmistakable smell is beginning to seep into the room around the edges of the window frames. It is the smell of coal smoke. Across the vast, sprawling metropolis of London, in thousands upon thousands of homes, servants are beginning to light the morning fires. A great yellow-brown cloud of smoke is already beginning to build in the sky, a permanent feature of the city's atmosphere that will stain the buildings, the clothes, and the very lungs of its inhabitants. Then comes a soft, deferential knock on your bedroom door. It is your lady's maid, a young woman named Sarah, and her arrival marks the official, scheduled beginning of your day. She enters quietly, already fully dressed in her simple, dark uniform and a crisp white apron. She curtsies, wishes you a good morning, and then moves about the room with a quiet, practiced efficiency that you have come to rely on completely. Her first task is to bring light into the darkness. She pulls the heavy draw cords, and the thick velvet curtains slide apart, revealing the morning. It is not a bright, cheerful sunlight that floods the room. It is the weak, gray, watery light of a London morning, filtered through a permanent, smoky haze. The window looks out onto a row of identical, soot-stained townhouses, the sky above them a uniform and melancholy shade of gray. Her second and most vital task is to bring warmth. She kneels at the small marble fireplace in your room. With a small shovel and brush, she deftly clears out the cold ashes from the night before, depositing them into a metal scuttle. She then lays a new fire with practiced hands, using paper, kindling, and carefully chosen lumps of coal. She strikes a lucifer match, and with a soft whoosh, the fire catches its cheerful, crackling sound and a wave of radiating heat, the first true comfort of your day. While the fire begins to warm the room, the next great ritual commences, the selection of your attire. This is not a simple matter of you choosing what you feel like wearing. Your clothing is your uniform, a complex and powerful signal of your status, your modesty, your taste, and your adherence to the strict social code. Every detail matters, and a mistake can lead to gossip and social ruin. Sarah opens the doors of your vast, dark mahogany wardrobe. Inside is a formidable array of dresses, a collection of silk, wool, and cotton in a rainbow of muted, respectable colors. The choice of which dress to wear is a strategic decision based on the day's planned activities. You do not dress for yourself, you dress for your audience. You sit up in bed, the blankets pulled around your shoulders for warmth, and you and Sarah discuss the schedule. It is a Tuesday. You are to receive morning calls this afternoon, and Lady Ashworth, a notorious gossip, is expected to be among your visitors. Therefore, you need a dress that is fashionable and elegant, but also modest and demure. Nothing too bright or flashy. A day dress suitable for receiving guests at home. Sarah understands the complex grammar of this sartorial language perfectly. She is not just your servant. She is your stylist, your advisor, and the guardian of your public image. She dismisses a fine silk, too formal for a morning call. She sets aside a simple cotton print, too casual. It might suggest you are not taking your guests seriously. Finally, she selects the perfect garment, a day dress of fine, gray wool, with a high, modest neckline, long, tight-fitting sleeves, and a full skirt designed to be worn over the necessary foundation of petticoats. It is elegant, respectable, and sends the perfect signal of quiet, moneyed, and virtuous domesticity. She lays it out carefully on the bed, alongside a formidable and intimidating collection of undergarments. The day has been planned. The uniform has been chosen. The lengthy, laborious process of constructing your public self is about to begin. With the crucial decision of your daily uniform made, the next phase of your morning ritual begins. The process of actually putting on these clothes is a complex, multi-stage affair that we will explore in detail later. Before that ordeal can commence, you must first perform your morning ablutions and take your breakfast. Both of these seemingly simple acts are, like everything else in your world, governed by a strict set of procedures and imbued with the underlying principles of your social class. You rise from the warmth of your bed, your bare feet meeting the cold wood of the floor, and you move towards the washstand in the corner of the room. There is no ensuite bathroom, no running hot water from a tap. Such conveniences are a fantasy of a future age. Your hygiene is made possible by the immense and largely invisible labor of your household staff. While you were discussing fashion with Sarah, another maid has been hauling heavy cans of hot water up several flights of stairs from the great boiler in the kitchen below. She has filled the large, elegant ceramic pitcher that sits in a matching basin on your washstand. Your morning wash is not a full bath. A full-body immersion in a tub is a much less frequent event, a complicated affair requiring many servants and a huge amount of hot water. Your daily routine is a sponge bath. You pour some of the warm water from the pitcher into the basin. You use a simple, unscented bar of soap and a soft cloth to wash your face, your hands, your neck, and your underarms. The entire process is one of quiet, modest efficiency. You are a respectable lady, and the vigorous, splashing ablutions of a common farm girl are not for you. Once you are done, you might dry your skin and apply a simple, light moisturizer, perhaps a rose water and glycerin lotion, to protect your delicate complexion. The dirty water from the basin will be discreetly removed and disposed of by Sarah later. You are left feeling clean, refreshed, and ready for the first meal of the day. As a lady of the house, you do not typically take breakfast in the main dining room with the men of the family, who have likely already eaten and departed for their business in the city. You will take your breakfast here, in the privacy of your room, or perhaps in a small, adjoining sitting room known as a boudoir or a morning room. Sarah brings a small table near the now roaring fire, and another servant arrives with a heavy silver tray. Breakfast is a formal affair, even when you are eating alone. The tray is laid with a starched white linen napkin, fine porcelain china, and gleaming silver cutlery. It is a small but potent display of the family's wealth and good taste. The meal itself is substantial. It might consist of a pair of coddled eggs, a rack of thinly sliced, crisp toast served with butter, and a pot of Dundee marmalade, perhaps a slice of cold-cured ham or a single-kippered herring, and, of course, a pot of tea, freshly brewed and served with milk and sugar. This is the fuel you will need for the long and surprisingly taxing day of respectable idleness that lies ahead of you. You eat with a slow and deliberate grace. Even here, alone with your thoughts, the performance of being a lady is relentless. You do not wolf down your food. You take small, delicate bites. You use the correct fork for your ham and the correct knife for your butter. You sip your tea quietly. Your every action is governed by the rules of propriety you have been taught since you were a child. As you eat, you might attend to your morning correspondence. The post has arrived, bringing a small pile of letters delivered by a footman. Letters are the lifeblood of your social world. You might have an invitation to a ball, a note from a cousin, or a letter from a friend who has moved to the countryside. You read them carefully, making a mental note of which ones require a prompt reply. You might also consult your engagement book, a small leather-bound diary where your social obligations are meticulously recorded. Here, you review the plans for the day. You confirm the list of houses where you and your mother must make your morning calls this afternoon. You note an upcoming church bazaar that you are expected to help with, and a dinner party you will be attending at the end of the week. Your life is a complex web of social duties, and this little book is the map that helps you to navigate it. Every hour of your day is accounted for, a carefully balanced schedule of social performance and virtuous domesticity. Breakfast is a serious affair. You tackle your coddled egg with the same strategic focus that a general applies to a battle plan. One must not be defeated by a runny yolk. Once the meal is finished and the tray has been discreetly removed, you turn to the final preparation for the day's social duties. You must prepare your calling cards. This is a mainstream historical fact and an absolutely indispensable part of your life. The small, elegantly engraved card, bearing nothing but your name, is your social passport. You never leave the house without a supply of them in a small silver or ivory case. The calling card is not just a way to leave your name. It is part of a complex, silent language of etiquette. The very way a card is presented or folded carries a specific meaning. The folded corner on your calling card is a secret code. It might mean condolences on your recent loss, or it might mean I came by but you weren't home. It's a very subtle system that mostly results in people being confused about why their cards are bent. Turning down the top right corner might signify a visit of congratulation, while the top left corner is for a visit of condolence. Leaving a card for the lady of the house with one for her unmarried daughters tucked underneath is a specific gesture with its own rules. To misunderstand this grammar is to commit a serious social error. As you sit by the fire, reviewing your schedule and preparing your cards, it is easy to forget the vast and complex machinery of labor that is humming away just beyond your perception. Your serene, quiet, and comfortable morning is an illusion, an elaborately constructed piece of theater, and its stagehands are the legion of servants who live and work downstairs. While you have been leisurely sipping your tea, the house beneath you has been a hive of frantic activity. The kitchen maid was up hours before you, lighting the great, monstrous coal stove. The cook has prepared not just your delicate breakfast, but a much heartier one for the men of the family, and a simpler, rougher meal for the entire staff. The scullery maid is already elbow deep in greasy water, scrubbing the pots and pans. A footman has been polishing the silver, another has been cleaning the boots, and a housemaid is on her hands and knees, scrubbing the main staircase. In some of the wealthiest and most technologically advanced homes, a quirky device called a dumb waiter might be used. This was a small, hand-operated elevator that connected the basement kitchen to the dining rooms above, allowing dishes to be transported upstairs without the constant, intrusive presence of servants walking up and down the stairs. It is a perfect symbol of the Victorian ideal, to have all the benefits of the labor without having to see the laborers themselves. Your entire morning, from the hot water in your basin to the toast on your plate, is a product of this invisible, grueling work. The strict social rules that govern your life are designed not just to control your behavior, but to maintain the rigid class structure that makes your leisurely existence possible. This raises a question that historians continue to debate. Were these highly rigid rules of etiquette a form of social cement, a necessary framework that provided stability and a shared code of conduct in a rapidly changing and often chaotic industrial society? Or were they primarily a form of social oppression, particularly for women, a gilded cage designed to control your behavior, limit your intellectual and personal freedom, and confine you to a purely domestic and ornamental role in the world? For you, it is simply the water you swim in, the air you breathe. You do not question it. You have been trained since birth to play your part in this great, complex performance. And your morning rituals are your preparation, the time you spend getting into character and costume. The day has been planned. The rules have been reviewed. You have eaten your fortifying breakfast and prepared your social ammunition. The stage is set. Now comes the most physically demanding part of your preparation, the transformation from a woman in a simple dressing gown to a fully armored lady of society. Your morning rituals are complete. You are clean, fed, and mentally prepared for the social battlefield of the day. Now comes the most physically demanding part of your morning, a process so lengthy and complex that it requires the assistance of at least one other person. It is time to get dressed, to construct the formidable, multi-layered silhouette that the world recognizes as a respectable Victorian lady. This is not a matter of simply putting on a dress. It is an act of structural engineering, and your own body is the foundation. You stand in the center of your room, wearing only the first and most basic layer, your undergarments. This consists of a simple, loose-fitting linen or cotton chemise, a sort of knee-length slip, and a pair of drawers, which are like loose trousers, often made with a surprisingly practical open crotch for ease of use in the privy. These are the garments of comfort and hygiene, the soft barrier between your skin and the much more aggressive layers that are to come. Now, Sarah, your maid, approaches with the most crucial, most controversial, and most transformative garment you will wear, the corset. It is an intimidating object, a formidable piece of engineering made from a tough, stiff fabric called coutil, and reinforced with dozens of vertical channels stitched into it. Into these channels are inserted rigid strips of whalebone, or, as the 1850s progress, flexible strips of steel. The front is fastened with a series of metal hooks and eyes on a rigid busk, and the back is a crisscrossing web of long, strong laces. You turn and hold firmly onto a bedpost or the back of a sturdy chair for support. Sarah places the corset around your midsection, fastens the hooks at the front, and then moves behind you to begin the real work. She takes the long laces in her hands. "Ready, ma'am?" she asks. You take a deep breath and then exhale completely, emptying your lungs. And then she pulls. The corset is an amazing invention. It helps you achieve the perfect hourglass figure, with the minor side effect of not being able to breathe or digest food. It's a look to die for, sometimes literally. The pressure is immense. The laces are pulled tighter and tighter still, cinching your waist with a relentless, vice-like grip. You can feel your own body being reshaped. Your lower ribs are compressed inwards. The soft organs of your abdomen, your stomach, your liver, your intestines are squeezed and displaced, pushed upwards and downwards to make way for this artificial, idealized waist. The goal is to achieve the fashionable silhouette of the era, a tiny, wasp-like waist that emphasizes the fullness of the bust and the hips. The corset achieves this with brutal efficiency. The pressure forces your bust upwards, creating the desired high, rounded bosom. The rigid structure smooths the line of your torso, creating a perfectly conical shape from the bust to the impossibly narrow waist. The process of tight lacing, as it is known, is a daily ordeal. You are literally reshaping your own skeleton to conform to a fashionable ideal. The health consequences, which are a subject of constant and worried debate in the medical journals of your time, are severe. The compression of your lungs means you can only take short, shallow breaths, making you prone to fainting spells, a condition that, as we've seen, was often romanticized as a sign of delicate sensitivity. The displacement of your internal organs can lead to a host of digestive problems, from indigestion to chronic constipation. Over years of tight lacing, the lower ribs can become permanently deformed, warped inwards by the constant pressure. But for you, this is the price of beauty and status. To appear in public with an uncorseted, natural waist would be a shocking, almost indecent act. It would be a sign that you were either a member of the lowest laboring classes, a woman of loose morals, or a radical, free-thinking eccentric. Your tightly laced waist is a symbol of your discipline, your refinement, and your commitment to the rigorous demands of fashion. After several minutes of intense pulling, Sarah ties the laces in a firm knot. You take a tentative, shallow breath. You are now encased in your cage of fabric and bone. Your torso transformed into the perfect, fashionable shape. The foundation of your look is now complete. Your torso is now locked into its fashionable, rigid shape. But this tiny, cinched waist is not an end in itself. It is the anchor point for the next and most voluminous stage of the construction. The Victorian silhouette of the 1850s demands a vast, bell-shaped skirt, a shape so wide that it makes your artificially tiny waist seem even smaller by contrast. To achieve this, you must build a formidable understructure of petticoats and steel. First, over your chemise and corset comes a corset cover, a simple cotton bodice to protect your dress from the hardware of the corset. Then, the layers of the skirt begin. For centuries, the only way to achieve a wide skirt was through sheer bulk. You would have had to pile on layer after layer of heavy petticoats, perhaps a simple flannel one for warmth, then one made of stiff horsehair canvas, the original crinoline, then several more made of cotton, heavily starched or corded to make them stand away from the body. To wear 6 or 7 of these heavy, bulky skirts was to be a walking fire hazard, incredibly hot in the summer, and exhausting to move around in. But you are a woman of the 1850s, a beneficiary of the Industrial Revolution's greatest gift to fashion, the cage crinoline. This is a mainstream historical invention, patented in the middle of the decade, and it has completely revolutionized your wardrobe. Sarah brings it forward. It is a remarkable and slightly absurd-looking object, a collapsible dome made from a series of fine, flexible, watch-spring steel hoops. These hoops, each one wider than the one above it, are held together by a series of vertical cotton tapes, creating a lightweight, hollow, and perfectly bell-shaped cage. You step into the center of it, and Sarah ties the tapes around your waist. The cage settles around you. You're now wearing a giant, collapsible steel cage under your dress. It's surprisingly lightweight, but it makes sitting down a complex engineering problem. In many ways, this cage is a liberation. It is a fraction of the weight of the old system of layered petticoats. For the first time, your legs are free underneath, able to move without being impeded by masses of heavy fabric. The cage is also more hygienic, allowing air to circulate freely. But it also presents a new set of challenges. The cage sways and bounces as you walk, a constant, springy motion that you must learn to control. A sudden gust of wind can catch the wide bell and threaten to lift it, revealing your ankles, a moment of profound social mortification. Navigating crowded rooms or narrow corridors requires a new spatial awareness, a constant calculation of your own considerable circumference. The cage itself is not the final underlayer. A simple cotton petticoat is worn over the top of it. This is essential to soften the hard, circular ridges of the steel hoops, ensuring they don't create visible lines through the fabric of your dress. This over petticoat also adds a final layer of modesty and helps the main dress to hang and drape in the correct, graceful way. You now stand in the center of your room, your body completely transformed. Your upper half is a slender, rigid cone, your lower half a vast, hollow, and perfectly symmetrical bell. You are a living hourglass, an architectural form, a walking testament to the extreme and artificial silhouette demanded by your time. The foundational structure is complete. Now, all that is left is to put on the dress itself. You are now a walking architectural form, a corseted torso above a steel bell. All that remains is the final, decorative layer that will cover this complex scaffolding. Sarah approaches with the gray wool day dress that was chosen earlier. It is a heavy garment containing many yards of fabric needed to drape gracefully over the vast circumference of your crinoline. She holds it aloft, and you carefully step into the center as she lowers it over your head. The dress settles into place over the understructure. You put your arms through the tight-fitting sleeves, and then you turn your back to Sarah for the final, laborious fastening. There are no zippers in your world. The back of your bodice is secured with a long, straight row of dozens of tiny, fabric-covered buttons and corresponding buttonholes, or a series of sharp metal hooks and eyes. It is a task that is physically impossible to do by yourself. You stand perfectly still for several minutes as Sarah's nimble fingers work their way up your spine, enclosing you completely in the garment. This daily dependence on another person to simply get dressed is a fundamental reality of your life. With the dress on, the final accessories are added. You sit down, a careful, calculated maneuver to make the cage crinoline collapse correctly, and put on your stockings, perhaps made of fine cotton or even silk, which are held up by garters tied above your knee. Your shoes are delicate, thin-soled slippers of soft leather or silk, completely impractical for walking on the grimy city streets, but perfectly suited for the carpeted interiors where you will spend your day. Then come the gloves. A respectable lady never, ever shows her bare hands in public. It is considered a mark of intimacy and informality, and in some contexts, is almost as shocking as revealing an ankle. You pull on a pair of tight-fitting gloves made of pale kid leather, carefully working each finger into its sheath. You will wear these for the entire duration of your afternoon calls. The final touch is your scent, and here again, the rules are strict and counterintuitive. Heavy, musky perfume is considered the very height of vulgarity. It is the scent of the courtesan, the actress, the fallen woman. A strong perfume suggests you are trying to mask an unpleasant odor, rather than being naturally clean. A lady's scent must be one of absolute, almost imperceptible, freshness and cleanliness. You do not apply fragrance to your skin. Instead, you take a crisp, clean, and immaculately ironed linen handkerchief. Upon its corner, you dab a single drop of a light, clean fragrance, perhaps lavender water, or a citrus-based oil like bergamot. Heavy perfume is a major social faux pas. You're supposed to smell faintly of soap and moral superiority, not like a French brothel. This handkerchief, with its hint of clean scent, is what you will hold in your gloved hand. The entire lengthy process of dressing is a subject of fascinating scholarly debate. Historians and feminists have long argued over the true meaning of the central garment in this ritual. The corset. Was it purely an oppressive tool of a patriarchal society, a device designed to physically restrict women, to make them weak and dependent, and to turn them into delicate, helpless ornaments? Or is that an oversimplification? Did some women experience their corset as a form of empowerment, a fashionable armor that provided them with a sense of status, confidence, and a feeling of control over their own appearance? It is a complex question with no easy answer. For you, however, it is not a debate. It is simply the reality of your life. You now stand before the long mirror in your room, your transformation complete. You are a perfect vision of 1850s respectability. You are encased, layered, and constricted. Your body has been molded into an artificial, fashionable shape. Every element of your appearance, from your tightly coiled hair to the scent on your handkerchief, is a carefully calculated signal of your class, your virtue, and your adherence to the rules. The armor is on. You are now ready to leave the privacy of your room and begin the public performance of your day. The armor is on, encased in your layers of fabric and bone. You are now a perfect, respectable Victorian lady, ready to leave the private sphere of your home and enter the public battlefield of society. Your first engagement of the day is one of the most important, most ritualized, and most perilous of all your duties. You are about to embark on a round of morning calls. Now, the first thing you must understand is that a morning call has absolutely nothing to do with the morning. The name is the first of many confusing rules designed to trip you up. The morning, for a lady of your class, is a private time reserved for managing the household, attending to correspondence, and perhaps some light, improving reading. To visit someone or to receive visitors before luncheon would be a shocking breach of etiquette, a sign of extreme vulgarity and poor breeding. The morning call is, in fact, an afternoon ritual, a series of short, formal social visits that take place within a very strict and unforgiving window of time, typically between 3 and 5 o'clock. The purpose of these calls is not to have a long, friendly chat. It is the primary mechanism by which your social network is maintained. It is a complex dance of seeing and being seen, of paying respect, of acknowledging new acquaintances and reaffirming old ones. It is how you remain a relevant and visible member of society. To neglect your calls is to risk being forgotten, to be slowly erased from the guest lists and the collective consciousness of your class. The ritual begins. You, accompanied by your mother, who will act as your guide and chaperone in this complex world, descend the main staircase. A footman, alerted by a bell, opens the great front door. Your carriage, a gleaming, dark lacquered box drawn by 2 perfectly matched horses, is waiting at the curb. The very existence of this private carriage is a powerful statement of your family's wealth and status, a clear signal that you do not have to resort to the indignity of a hired cab or, heaven forbid, public transport. You settle into the plush, buttoned leather interior of the carriage. In your gloved hand, you carry your silver calling card case, your ammunition for the afternoon's campaign. Your mother gives the driver a list of addresses, and with a lurch, the carriage joins the slow, noisy, horse-drawn traffic of the London streets. You gaze out the window at the endless rows of soot-stained brick townhouses, the bustling crowds on the pavement, the whole chaotic, sprawling, and deeply stratified world you are about to navigate. You arrive at the first house on your list. The carriage pulls up, and a footman leaps down to open the door and help you alight. You do not approach the door yourself. You wait as the footman takes 2 of your calling cards, one for the mistress of the house, and one for her unmarried daughters, places them on a small silver tray, and proceeds up the steps to the front door. This is the moment of truth. The door is opened by a butler or a parlor maid. Your cards are taken inside. You wait. A few moments later, the servant returns. He might inform your footman that the lady of the house is not at home. This is almost certainly a polite fiction. To be not at home does not mean the person is physically absent. It is a coded message that means they are not receiving visitors at this time. Perhaps they are tired or unwell, or simply do not wish to see you. The code allows them to refuse a visit without causing offense. In this case, you have fulfilled your duty. You have called. You will leave your cards with a specific corner discreetly turned down to signify that you came in person. and you will proceed to the next house on your list. But today, the servant returns with a different message. Mrs. Ashworth is at home. This is the invitation. You and your mother now ascend the steps and are shown into the house. You are divested of your heavy outdoor cloaks, and then you are led towards the inner sanctum of Victorian social life, the drawing room. You take a steadying, shallow breath. The performance is about to begin. You are ushered into the drawing room, the formal heart of the Victorian home and the designated stage for this social theater. The room is a masterpiece of carefully curated clutter. Heavy, dark velvet curtains block out much of the already weak daylight, creating a perpetual twilight. The air is warm from a well-tended coal fire in the hearth, and every surface is covered. A thick, patterned carpet muffles your footsteps. The walls are covered in a dense, floral wallpaper. The room is crowded with imposing, dark wood furniture, a sofa, several armchairs, a piano, and a multitude of small, occasional tables, each one laden with objects designed to display the family's wealth, taste, and piety. There are family photographs in silver frames, a glass-fronted cabinet filled with fine china, leather-bound books of poetry, and a large, illustrated family Bible. Your hostess, Mrs. Ashworth, rises to greet you. The exchange is formal and polite. You inquire after her health, and she after yours. You are invited to take a seat, arranging your vast crinoline skirt in a maneuver that is both graceful and complex. And now, the clock starts ticking. For the unwritten, yet absolutely unbreakable, rule of the morning call is that it must last for 15 minutes. Exactly 15 minutes. Your eyes discreetly find the large, ornate clock on the mantelpiece. Its steady, rhythmic ticking is now the soundtrack to your performance, a constant and merciless reminder of the strict time limit you are under. You have exactly 15 minutes. It's not a conversation. It's a social hostage situation with a time limit. You talk about the weather, you admire a vase, and then you escape. This rigid timing is not an arbitrary rule. It is the very engine of the entire system. To depart after only 10 minutes would be a mortal insult. It would send a clear, unspoken message to your hostess that you find her and her home uninteresting, that you are bored, and that you consider her to be of a lower social standing, unworthy of the full regulation quarter of an hour. It is a subtle but devastating social snub. To stay too long, however, is an even greater sin. To linger for 20 minutes, or, heaven forbid, half an hour, is a sign of hopelessly poor breeding. It demonstrates that you do not know the rules of polite society. But more damningly, it implies that you have nothing better to do, that your social calendar is empty, that you have no other important calls to make. It marks you as a person of low social standing, a person who is desperate for company. It is a confession of your own irrelevance. Being early is eager. Being late is rude. Being on time is the single most important accomplishment of your day. It's a very stressful way to have a leisurely afternoon. And so, you must fill these 15 minutes with a conversation that is perfectly calibrated to be pleasant, polite, and completely meaningless. This is not the time for deep thoughts, personal revelations, or strong opinions. The topics are a well-rehearsed rotation of the safe and the impersonal. You begin with the weather, a subject of endless and fascinating neutrality. You might then move on to a brief, general inquiry about the health of the family, to which the answer will always be a variation of, "Quite well, thank you." You might discuss the sermon given by the vicar at last Sunday's church service, praising its moral clarity without ever touching on the specifics of theology. You might admire an object in the room, a vase of flowers, a small painting on the wall. This is a compliment to your hostess's taste and allows for a few minutes of conversation about the object's origin. Every word is carefully chosen to be moderate, agreeable, and entirely uncontroversial. The 15 minutes stretch before you, a vast expanse of time that must be filled with this delicate, verbal embroidery. As the clock on the mantelpiece ticks towards the quarter hour, you must begin to prepare your exit with a grace and precision that conceals the rigid mechanics of the ritual. As the hand of the mantelpiece clock aligns perfectly with the quarter hour, your internal social clock chimes. It is time to leave. You rise gracefully, a smooth and practiced motion that signals the end of the interview. To do so a minute earlier would be rude. A minute later, a sign of poor breeding. You and your mother offer your final pleasantries, thank Mrs. Ashworth for receiving you, and then you glide out of the room. The performance is over. You have successfully navigated the social minefield. These incredibly precise and often baffling rules were not simply absorbed from birth. They were codified and studied with the seriousness of a scientific discipline. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Victorian era saw a massive explosion in the publication of etiquette manuals. Books like Manners and Rules of Good Society or the latest book of etiquette, which became the Bibles for the aspiring middle classes and a rule book for the aristocracy. These books laid out, in painstaking and obsessive detail, the correct protocol for every conceivable social situation, from how to hold a fork to the precise corner of a calling card to fold for a condolence visit. Of course, the sheer rigidity and exhausting nature of the formal morning call led to the invention of more efficient, if still highly structured, forms of socializing. A quirky and fashionable alternative that became popular was the kettle drum. This was a much larger, more informal afternoon tea party. You might be invited to a house between 4 and 7 o'clock, where you would find the drawing room crowded with dozens of other guests, all mingling and chatting. The name kettle drum supposedly came from the loud, constant chatter of the crowd, which was likened to the noise of a drumming kettle. It was a livelier and less intimidating affair, a way to see and be seen by a great number of people in a single afternoon, without the relentless, repetitive stress of the one-on-one, 15-minute performance. But why did such a rigid system of rules exist in the first place? This is a question that social historians continue to debate. Was the purpose of this complex etiquette to genuinely create a more polite, more orderly, and more considerate society? Was it a necessary framework for managing social interactions in the huge, anonymous, and rapidly growing city of London, where one was constantly encountering new people? Or was its purpose far more cynical and exclusionary? Some historians argue that the primary function of these impossibly complex and arbitrary rules was to act as a social gatekeeper. They were a secret code, a test designed to identify those who belonged to the established upper class and to expose and humiliate the newcomers, the wealthy industrialists, the nouveau riche, who did not know the secret handshake. To use the wrong fork or to overstay your 15-minute call was to immediately reveal yourself as an outsider, no matter how much money you had. As you settle back into the plush seats of your carriage, the door closing with a satisfying thud, you feel a wave of exhaustion. You have only been in the house for a quarter of an hour, but the level of focus, the constant self-monitoring, and the pressure to perform flawlessly are immensely draining. You mentally cross Mrs. Ashworth off your list for the day. There are 3 more calls to make before you can return home. You are a soldier in a quiet, polite, and deeply ruthless social war. And the battle has only just begun. The carriage door closes, and you are once again cocooned in the relative privacy of your mobile chamber, rattling your way through the London streets to the next social engagement on your list. You have successfully navigated the complex rituals of arrival, the silent language of the calling card, and the tyrannical precision of the 15-minute visit. But now, we must turn our attention to the most perilous part of that performance, the conversation itself. You must master the delicate, demanding, and deeply strange art of Victorian conversation, a skill that is less about what you say and more about what you absolutely, under no circumstances, must ever say. The first and most important principle you must understand is that the goal of a polite conversation is not to exchange information, debate ideas, or share personal feelings. The goal is to maintain a smooth, pleasant, agreeable, and entirely uncontroversial surface for precisely 15 minutes. It is a verbal performance of your good breeding and your respect for propriety. Expressing a strong, controversial opinion is the conversational equivalent of setting off fireworks in a library. It's just not done. Your task is to fill the silence without ever touching upon a topic that could cause the slightest ripple of passion, disagreement, or discomfort. To achieve this, you have a mental list of subjects that are strictly forbidden in polite company. The first and most vulgar of these is money. You must never speak of the cost of things. To admire your hostess's new vase and ask what she paid for it would be a social sin of catastrophic proportions. To speak of your own wealth, or the lack of it, is equally unthinkable. Money is the engine of your entire world, the foundation of your status, but it is a machine that must be kept hidden, its grimy workings never to be discussed. Similarly, a gentleman's profession or business is never a suitable topic. While his work may be the source of the family's fortune, it is considered part of the sordid, masculine world of commerce, a subject unfit for the delicate sensibilities of the drawing room. You would never ask a man what he does for a living. You must interact with him as a gentleman of leisure, even if you both know he spends 10 hours a day in a dusty law office or a noisy counting house. Politics and religion, the 2 great passions of your age, are also to be avoided at all costs. These are subjects that are too divisive, too likely to lead to a heated and unseemly debate. While everyone in the room has strong opinions, the code of politeness demands that they be suppressed in favor of a smooth and agreeable harmony. You may touch upon the most superficial aspects, praising the vicar's recent sermon on charity, for example, but you must never delve into the treacherous waters of actual theological or political disagreement. Even topics that seem safe, like health, are minefields of potential vulgarity. A general and formulaic inquiry, "I trust you and your family are keeping well," is expected. But to ask for any specific details, or to offer any of your own, is considered coarse. The messy, physical realities of the human body are to be kept strictly private. This brings us to the greatest and most encompassing sin of Victorian conversation, the sin of curiosity. To ask a direct, personal, or probing question is a mark of exceptionally poor breeding. It is seen as an intrusive and vulgar attempt to pry into the private affairs of another. Your conversation must be a dance of statements, not an interrogation of questions. You spend your whole life learning how to talk for hours without ever revealing a single personal thought or feeling. It's a superpower of sorts. The art of conversation is the art of talking around a subject, of acknowledging it without ever actually examining it. And this skill is most crucial when dealing with the great events of life. Victorian conversation is like walking through a minefield of interesting topics. Your job is to stay on the tiny, boring path of approved subjects. It's less a conversation and more a verbal game of operation. This skill of saying nothing of substance is most crucial when you are required to acknowledge a major life event, an engagement, a birth, or a death. You must navigate these significant moments with a conversational grace that acknowledges the event without ever showing the vulgarity of actual curiosity. Let us imagine you are at an afternoon tea, and you encounter a young woman whose engagement to a prominent gentleman has just been announced. Your modern instincts would be to ask 100 questions. How did he propose? Are you in love? When and where will the wedding be? To ask any of these questions in your present context would be a social disaster. They are far too personal, too probing, and too emotional. Instead, you must perform a carefully scripted exchange. You approach her with a warm but reserved smile. My dear Miss Eleanor, you might say, we were so perfectly delighted to read the news in the Times this morning. You must allow me to offer my sincerest congratulations. Your comment is not about her feelings, but about the public announcement. She will respond with equal formality. You are too kind. Thank you. You then add a comment about the suitability of the match, which is the only truly important aspect of the event. Mr. Fairchild is known to be a gentleman of the highest standing and fortune. Your family must be very pleased. Again, the focus is on his social position and her family's satisfaction, not on her personal happiness. Oh, this. She will simply incline her head and agree. And then, the topic must be changed immediately to something safer, like the weather. The entire exchange has been handled with perfect propriety. The event has been acknowledged. Congratulations have been offered, but no personal boundaries have been crossed. The same rules of discretion apply to moments of grief. You are paying a condolence call to a widow whose husband has recently passed away. You must express sympathy, but you must not, under any circumstances, inquire about the details of the death. To ask, what was the nature of his illness, or did he suffer greatly at the end, would be seen as a ghoulish and unforgivable intrusion into the family's private sorrow. Your words must be brief, formal, and focused on the good character of the deceased and the consolations of religion. You might say, please accept our deepest and most sincere sympathies in your great loss. Or, he was a man of unimpeachable character and a great pillar of the community. He will be sorely missed. You offer your support in the abstract, and then you allow the conversation to lapse into a respectful silence or move on to a neutral topic. The messy, physical reality of death is a private matter, not a subject for public discussion. Nowhere is this avoidance of the physical more pronounced than in the discussion of childbirth. When a family in your circle welcomes a new baby, you must offer your congratulations. But the physical act of birth is the ultimate unmentionable topic. It is a biological, painful, and bloody event, and it is therefore banished entirely from polite conversation. You would never ask an acquaintance about her experience in labor. Your comments are focused entirely on the happy, sanitized result. We were overjoyed to hear of the safe arrival of your new son and heir. You might write in a note. We wish both mother and child continued health and happiness. The conversation is kept on this abstract, celebratory plane. The 9 months of pregnancy and the ordeal of labor are treated as if they never happened. The child has simply arrived, a neat and tidy addition to the family, with no mention of the messy, biological process that brought it into the world. This is the art of guarded words, a constant, vigilant effort to maintain a smooth, agreeable, and perfectly sanitized surface over the rough, messy, and complicated reality of human life. The guiding principle behind this strange and restrictive art of conversation is the ideal of moderation. Strong emotions, loudly expressed, are the ultimate social sin. Passion, enthusiasm, anger, even uproarious laughter, are all seen as signs of a poorly regulated and unrefined character. You must, at all times, maintain a placid, calm, and agreeable exterior. Expressing a strong, controversial opinion is the conversational equivalent of setting off fireworks in a library. It's just not done. Your public self is a serene and placid lake, and it is your social duty to ensure that no conversational stone is ever thrown that might create a disruptive ripple. This somber and dignified tone was set from the very top of society. This is a mainstream historical fact. Queen Victoria herself, particularly after the death of her beloved Prince Albert in 1861, became the ultimate symbol of this reserved and proper demeanor. Her long and very public mourning, her sober black clothing, and her famously serious expression, encapsulated in the legendary, if possibly apocryphal, phrase, "We are not amused," set the moral and social tone for the entire age. To be respectable was to emulate the perceived dignity and self-control of the Queen. To help navigate the terrifying prospect of a lull in conversation, or the even greater danger of someone accidentally saying something interesting, a quirky and popular solution was the use of parlor games and conversation cards. After dinner, a hostess might produce a deck of cards, each one printed with a safe, impersonal, and intellectually stimulating question. What is your opinion on the recent novels of Mr. Dickens? Or, which historical figure do you most admire, and for what virtue? These games provided a structured and safe framework for discussion, ensuring that the conversation never strayed into the dangerous territory of the personal. This entire culture of verbal repression has led to a fascinating and ongoing scholarly debate. Historians and literary scholars argue whether this famously reserved style of communication was a true reflection of the Victorians' inner lives, or if it was merely a carefully constructed public mask. Do their private diaries and their secret, often passionate and turbulent letters reveal a rich and complex emotional world that was simply hidden from the public gaze? Or did the immense social pressure to constantly suppress and control their emotions actually alter the way they experience the world, making them genuinely more reserved and less emotionally demonstrative, even to themselves? What is certain is that you, as a Victorian lady, have mastered this art. You have learned how to talk for hours without ever revealing a single personal thought, a deeply held conviction, or a vulnerable feeling. It's a superpower of sorts. Your conversation is a form of armor, a polished and impenetrable shield that you wear to protect yourself from the vulgarity of intrusion. It is also a defense of the social order itself, a collective agreement to keep the messy, unpredictable, and potentially disruptive reality of human emotion safely hidden behind a wall of pleasant, meaningless words. The performance must be maintained at all costs. The last of your 15-minute morning calls is complete. You have successfully navigated the treacherous waters of calling card etiquette and the verbal minefield of polite, meaningless conversation. You return home, and the afternoon stretches before you, but this is not a time for unstructured leisure or spontaneous fun. A respectable lady's life is a fortress against the great moral failing of idleness. Your time is a precious commodity, not to be wasted, but to be filled with a carefully curated schedule of accomplishments, respectable, virtuous, and entirely passionless pastimes that demonstrate your good breeding and your domestic grace. Your day is filled with accomplishments. This means you're very good at a number of things that have absolutely no practical or economic value. It's the ultimate luxury, an idle mind, as the vicar is so fond of reminding you, is the devil's workshop. Your schedule, therefore, is a carefully constructed defense against sin, a testament to your disciplined and well-regulated character. After removing your visiting dress and changing into a simpler, but no less restrictive, home dress, your afternoon of virtuous activity begins. Your primary and most quintessential pastime is needlework. You take your seat in the drawing room, always in a straight-backed chair that supports your corseted posture, and you take up your embroidery hoop. The work before you might be a sampler, a piece of linen upon which you stitch the alphabet, numbers, and a pious verse, a demonstration of your literacy and your piety. Or perhaps you are working on a more ambitious piece of decorative embroidery, a floral pattern for a cushion cover, a set of initials on a fine linen handkerchief, or a large narrative tapestry panel depicting a scene from the Bible or a classical myth. The work is slow, painstaking, and requires immense focus. Your stitches must be tiny, neat, and perfectly uniform. You work with fine silk or wool threads, your needle moving in a steady, rhythmic, and deeply calming motion. In, out, for hours. You can sit like this, a picture of quiet, domestic diligence. This is not just a hobby. It is a powerful performance of your femininity and your class. Your skill with a needle demonstrates your patience, your attention to detail, and your suitability as a future wife who will be able to manage the mending and creation of household linens. The very act of sitting quietly, focused on such a delicate and non-strenuous task, is a testament to your gentle, placid temperament. And the fact that you have hours of your life to dedicate to a purely ornamental craft is the ultimate proof of your status. The peasant woman also sews, but she does it out of grim necessity, patching a worn-out tunic or darning a hole in a stocking. You sew for beauty, and that is the privilege of your class. Another acceptable artistic pursuit is drawing or painting, though these two are governed by a strict set of rules. You might set up a small easel by the window and work on a delicate watercolor. The subjects are always respectable and picturesque. You might paint a vase of flowers, carefully rendering each petal and leaf. You might attempt a gentle, pastoral landscape, a copy of a print, or a scene from your imagination, full of rolling hills and placid sheep. What you do not paint are subjects that are too dramatic, too violent, or too emotional. You do not paint scenes from history that are bloody or controversial. You do not paint the human form, and certainly not the nude. And you do not paint with the bold, passionate, and messy strokes of a male artist. Your work is expected to be precise, delicate, and pretty. It is another accomplishment, a way to demonstrate your refined sensibilities and your artistic taste, all within the safe and rigidly defined boundaries of what is considered properly feminine. After an hour or two of disciplined stitching, you may set aside your embroidery hoop for a more intellectual pursuit, reading. But this is not a moment for escapist fantasy or thrilling adventure. For a Victorian lady, reading is a serious and purposeful activity. Its goal is not entertainment, but moral and spiritual improvement. Your personal library is a carefully curated and heavily censored collection, its contents approved by the stern gatekeeper of the household's intellectual life, your father. You are encouraged to read, but only from a very specific list of books. It's like having access to the internet, but you're only allowed to visit one very boring website. The most important book is, of course, the Bible. You are expected to read a passage each day. Alongside it on your bookshelf might be volumes of published sermons from a popular and morally upright preacher, or books of devotional poetry. If you read novels, they must be of a specific, didactic type. Stories that provide a clear and unambiguous moral lesson, reinforcing the virtues of piety, charity, and domestic duty. The sensational penny dreadfuls that are popular with the working classes, with their lurid tales of crime and adventure, are strictly forbidden. And French novels are considered the absolute pinnacle of literary depravity, full of a scandalous passion and moral ambiguity that is believed to be poisonous to the delicate female mind. Likewise, books on subjects considered unfeminine, such as politics, economics, or hard science, are deemed unsuitable. Your reading is a carefully managed diet, designed to nourish your virtue and suppress any dangerous appetite for independent thought or worldly excitement. After your session of moral improvement, it is time for your musical practice. In the center of the drawing room stands the piano, a large, ornate, and fantastically expensive instrument that is the ultimate symbol of a cultured and prosperous household. One of your most important accomplishments as a lady is the ability to play it. You have spent years of your childhood in tedious, repetitive lessons, and now you must practice each day to maintain your skill. You seat yourself at the keyboard and open a book of sheet music. The pieces you play are chosen for their charm and their pleasantness. You might play a simple arrangement of a popular opera aria, a sentimental ballad, or a lively dance tune like a polka or a waltz. The music is pretty, melodic, and technically undemanding. This is a crucial point. You are expected to be accomplished, but not brilliant. You must play well enough to entertain the family and guests after dinner, but to play with too much passion, too much fire, or too much technical virtuosity would be a serious social error. It would seem professional, as if you were a paid musician rather than a lady of leisure. More than that, to show too much emotion in your playing, to lose yourself in the music, would be a sign of a dangerously uncontrolled and overly sensual nature. Your performance, like your conversation, must always be a model of tasteful moderation and modest restraint. It is another task to be mastered, another box to be checked on the long list of respectable ladylike accomplishments. Your afternoon is a carefully constructed tapestry of these quiet, domestic accomplishments. The final respectable activity that might fill your hours is charitable work. This was the only socially sanctioned way for a lady of your class to engage with the wider world, a way to perform your Christian duty while still remaining firmly within the boundaries of acceptable feminine behavior. This role was perfectly encapsulated by the great mainstream historical ideal of your time, the angel in the house. This phrase, from a hugely popular poem by Coventry Patmore, came to represent the perfect Victorian wife. She was expected to be a paragon of domestic virtue, devoted, submissive, passive, and a pure moral influence who would guard the home as a sacred refuge from the corrupt, masculine world of commerce and politics. Charitable work was seen as the natural extension of this angelic domesticity, a way for you to spread your gentle, moralizing influence to the less fortunate. Your charity work, however, is not a hands-on affair. You do not ladle soup in a grimy soup kitchen or nurse the sick in a fever ward. Such work is far too coarse and physically dangerous for a lady of your delicate constitution. Instead, your charity is performed at a respectable remove. You might join a committee of other ladies from your church to organize a bazaar, selling your own embroidery and watercolor paintings to raise funds for a missionary society. You might spend an afternoon in a clean, bright church hall, sewing simple garments for poor children, or rolling clean linen bandages for the local hospital. It is a clean, quiet, and highly visible performance of your piety and your compassion. If the weather is fine, you might engage in a quirky and hugely popular Victorian hobby, fern collecting. Pterodomania, or fern fever, was an obsessive passion that swept the nation, and it was a pastime deemed particularly suitable for ladies. It was one of the very few scientific pursuits open to you. It combined a gentle, healthy walk in the country, chaperoned, of course, with the intellectual challenge of identifying and classifying the different varieties of ferns you found. You would venture out with a small trowel and a collecting case called a Wardian case, delicately excavating interesting specimens to be brought home, pressed, and mounted in an album. All of these pursuits, the needlepoint, the moralizing books, the restrained piano playing, and the carefully managed charity work, raise a question that historians continue to debate. Were these accomplishments purely tools of oppression, a gilded cage of trivial activities designed to keep women intellectually confined and domestically docile? Or could they also be quiet avenues for genuine creativity and personal expression? Was your intricate embroidery a symbol of your confinement, or was it a powerful medium for your own artistic vision? Was your reading a path to moral conformity, or a secret gateway to more subversive and independent ideas? What is certain is that your day is a constant and relentless war against idleness. Idleness is a sin. Your schedule is packed with activities designed to prevent you from having a single, unsupervised thought. It's very effective. From the moment you wake until the moment you must begin preparing for the evening's social engagements, your time is filled with a steady, unbroken rhythm of virtuous, respectable, and entirely passionless activity. You have demonstrated your artistic skill, your moral fortitude, your musical accomplishment, and your charitable spirit. You have performed your role as the angel in the house perfectly. And the ultimate purpose of this flawless, day-long performance is to prove that you are a worthy and desirable prize in the most important undertaking of your life, the great game of Victorian matchmaking. Your afternoon is a carefully constructed performance of virtuous and respectable accomplishments. You have practiced your scales on the piano with modest restraint. You have added another 1,000 tiny, perfect stitches to your embroidery. And you have read a chapter from a morally improving book. Every moment has been filled with purposeful, passionless activity, all designed to sculpt you into the perfect domestic angel. But now, The true purpose of this relentless, lifelong performance is about to be tested. The footman has just announced a visitor. It is Mr. Thomas Fairchild, a young gentleman of good family and even better prospects, who has come to pay a call. This is not a casual visit. This is an inspection, and the great, unspoken game of Victorian courtship has begun. All of your training, every lesson in etiquette, every moment of your carefully curated education has been leading to moments like this. Your ultimate purpose as a young, unmarried lady of good family is to attract a suitable husband, a man who can enhance your family's status, provide you with a comfortable home, and with whom you can produce the next generation of respectable citizens. Mr. Fairchild is, on paper, a perfect candidate, and as he is shown into the drawing room, you feel a flutter of something, perhaps anxiety, perhaps excitement, but you know that your most important task is to conceal it completely. The cardinal rule of courtship, the principle upon which your entire reputation rests, is that you must never, ever appear eager. To show an open interest in a suitor is to be forward, unladylike, and cheap. It suggests a desperate, unbecoming desire, and it instantly lowers your value on the competitive marriage market. Your heart may be pounding, but your face must be a mask of serene, polite, and almost complete indifference. You are the prize to be won, and the prize does not chase. It merely consents to be pursued. You are seated with your mother in the drawing room. When Mr. Fairchild is announced, you do not leap to your feet. You rise slowly, gracefully, a picture of calm composure. Your mother, as your chaperone and the chief strategist of this campaign, greets him first. You offer him a small, polite, closed-mouth smile and a slight inclination of your head. You do not offer your hand unless he extends his first, and even then, the handshake is a brief, light touch of your gloved fingers against his. You do not speak first. You wait to be spoken to. You take your seat again, resuming your needlework. Your hands must be occupied with a respectable task. To sit with idle hands would seem too expectant, too available. Your needlepoint is your shield and your alibi. It gives you a reason to keep your eyes modestly downcast. It proves that this visit, while welcome, is merely a brief interruption in your otherwise busy and virtuous day. It is a masterpiece of calculated nonchalance. Mr. Fairchild, if he is a well-bred gentleman who knows the rules of the game, will not address you directly at first. He will direct his conversation primarily towards your mother. They will engage in the safe, formulaic pleasantries that we have already discussed. The weather, a recent sermon, the health of mutual acquaintances. You are the subject of the visit, the silent center of gravity in the room. But for the first several minutes, you are not an active participant in the conversation. You are an object to be observed, a beautiful, silent, and industrious daughter, a testament to your mother's successful upbringing. Your performance of polite indifference is the first and most important test of the afternoon, and you are determined to pass it with flying colors. As Mr. Fairchild and your mother exchange their carefully scripted pleasantries, you remain a silent, industrious presence in the room. You are the object of the visit, but the rules of the game dictate that you must appear to be the least interested person there. After a suitable amount of time has been spent on the weather and other neutral topics, Mr. Fairchild, a young man who clearly understands his role, will attempt to draw you into the conversation. He might lean forward slightly and say, "That is a most intricate piece of needlework you are engaged in, Miss Clara." The detail is quite remarkable. This is your cue. You must now look up from your embroidery. You let your hands fall still in your lap. You meet his gaze for a brief, controlled moment, and then you lower your eyes again as you respond. Your voice must be soft, your words polite and well chosen, but your tone must be carefully neutral, betraying no hint of excitement or pleasure at his compliment. "You are very kind to say so, Mr. Fairchild," you might reply. It is a simple pattern, but it passes the time agreeably. And that is all. You do not elaborate. You do not gush about your love for embroidery. You do not ask him if he has any interest in the textile arts. You make a polite, brief, and self-deprecating statement, and then you allow the conversation to fall back to your mother, who will immediately pick up the thread. While you are the master of performing indifference, your mother is the master of salesmanship. She is the conductor of this social orchestra, and she will not let your modesty stand in the way of a good match. "Clara is too modest," she will say to Mr. Fairchild with a warm smile. "Her needlework is considered among the finest in our circle. Indeed, the sampler she completed last year was awarded a special commendation by the vicar's wife at the church bazaar." In this way, your accomplishments are highlighted, but by your mother, not by you. This allows you to remain in your role as the demure, humble maiden, while she ensures that your prospective suitor is made fully aware of your many virtues. If Mr. Fairchild mentions a recent concert, your mother will use it as an opportunity. "Ah, yes," she will say, "Clara has been practicing a most challenging sonata by Beethoven. She has such a delicate touch at the piano." Through this entire exchange, you are a beautiful, serene, and slightly bored-looking statue, a paragon of ladylike self-possession. You are demonstrating your good breeding through your restraint. By being aloof, you are increasing your value. You are showing that you are not easily won, that you are a prize to be pursued with diligence and effort. It is a high-stakes performance, and every subtle gesture, every controlled response, is a part of your strategy in this intricate and deeply serious game. While you and your mother are engaged in this complex performance of demure salesmanship, Mr. Fairchild has his own set of rigid rules to follow. He, too, is on a stage, and his performance is just as crucial to the success of the encounter. His task is to show his interest and admiration in a way that is respectful, honorable, and not in the least bit threatening or overly familiar. He cannot, for instance, compliment your physical appearance directly. To say, "You have beautiful eyes," would be a shocking and vulgar breach of protocol. It is far too personal, too intimate. Instead, he must compliment your virtues and your accomplishments, the products of your good breeding. He praises your needlework, not your hands. He might inquire after a book of poetry on the table, which gives him an opportunity to praise your refined literary taste, not your intelligence. His compliments are always indirect, aimed at the respectable persona you have constructed, not the woman underneath. Crucially, he directs the majority of his conversation towards your mother. This is a sign of ultimate respect. By addressing the chaperone, he is acknowledging her authority. He is implicitly asking her permission to admire you. He is demonstrating that his intentions are honorable and that he understands the proper channels of communication. A suitor who ignored the mother and spoke only to the daughter would be seen as a dangerously improper rogue, and his visit would be brought to a swift and chilly conclusion. The entire visit is a delicate process of him testing the waters, and of you and your mother providing the faintest of signals. He is looking for a sign of encouragement, however small. If, after he makes a particularly witty, but safe remark, you reward him with a small, genuine, closed-mouth smile. It is a major victory. If your mother suggests that you might be attending the same public concert next week, it is a powerful hint that his continued attention would be welcome. The entire conversation is a subtextual dance of hints, signals, and carefully managed encouragement. This single, quiet visit to your drawing room is not an isolated event. It is one small move in a much larger, more organized, and intensely competitive game. This is a mainstream historical fact of your time. Your courtship is taking place during the London season. This is the annual period, roughly from late winter until the height of summer, when the aristocratic and wealthy gentry from all over the country close up their country estates and move to their grand townhouses in London. Ostensibly, the season is for the sitting of Parliament and for a round of social engagements. But its true, inspoken purpose is to serve as a high-stakes, high-society marriage market. It is a whirlwind of balls, dinner parties, trips to the opera, afternoon picnics, and formal presentations at the royal court, all designed to allow the marriageable sons and daughters of the elite to meet, court, and, with the guidance of their parents, become engaged to suitably matched partners. Mr. Fairchild's carefully managed 15-minute visit is just one small, calculated step in this vast, city-wide strategic game. The London season is a whirlwind of highly structured, formal events. While the afternoon call is a quiet, controlled interview, the grand balls and crowded assemblies of the evening are a different kind of social theater. In a noisy, crowded ballroom, a quiet, verbal conversation with a suitor is almost impossible. Here, you must rely on an even more subtle and secret form of communication, a quirky and fascinating language that is hidden in plain sight. You must learn to speak with your fan. The fan is not just an elegant accessory, a tool for creating a gentle breeze in a stuffy, gaslit ballroom. It is a complex signaling device, a veritable telegraph machine for the intricate messages of courtship. The language of the fan is a complex and subtle art. A quick flick of the wrist could mean, "I find you charming," or it could just mean, "It's a bit warm in here." Reading the signals correctly is a vital skill for any aspiring suitor. An entire vocabulary of gestures allows you to have a silent, secret conversation with a young man across a crowded room, all under the watchful eye of your mother and a dozen other chaperones. If you hold your fan to your lips with your right hand, it can mean, "Follow me." If you drop the fan, it is a clear and direct invitation. We can be friends. Tapping the fan against your right cheek can mean yes, while tapping it against your left means a firm no. This silent, coded language gives you a small but significant degree of power in a process where you otherwise have very little. This leads to a question that historians continue to debate. What was the true level of agency that you, a young, unmarried woman, had in the selection of your own husband? Were you a completely passive pawn in your parents' strategic games? A piece of property to be bartered for land and status, with no say in your own future? Or did you possess a more subtle, but nonetheless powerful, form of influence? The evidence suggests that while you could not choose your own husband freely, you often possessed a powerful veto. If your parents proposed a match that you found truly repulsive, a man who was cruel or dissolute, or simply unbearable to you, you had ways of signaling your displeasure. You could become mysteriously unwell, every time he called. You could be cold and unresponsive in his presence. You could use the language of the fan to signal your disinterest to him directly. A family would be reluctant to force a marriage on a daughter who was so clearly and stubbornly opposed to it, as a miserable, incooperative wife could be a social and domestic disaster. So while you could not choose your own path, you often had the power to close a path you did not wish to take, forcing your parents to find a more acceptable alternative. This subtle power, this ability to signal your acceptance or rejection through a complex and silent language, is your main tool in the otherwise rigid process of matchmaking. The game is played out in 100 tiny gestures, in the arch of an eyebrow, the flick of a fan, and the careful, neutral words spoken in the drawing room. Let us return to that room, where Mr. Fairchild's 15-minute call is now drawing to its conclusion. He has performed his part admirably. He has shown respectful interest, complimented your accomplishments, and deferred to your mother's authority. He rises, signaling his departure. The farewell is as formal as the greeting. He offers a slight bow to your mother, and then to you. You, in turn, offer a polite, closed-mouth smile and a small curtsy. He backs out of the room, and the footman shows him to the door. The moment you hear the front door close, the atmosphere in the drawing room changes instantly. The performance is over. The masks of polite indifference are dropped. After the suitor leaves, you and your mother analyze the visit in more detail than a general preparing for battle. The 15-minute visit provides enough data for a 3-hour discussion on his financial prospects and the quality of his manners. Well, your mother might say, her tone now brisk and businesslike. His manners are impeccable, and his father's estate in Kent is unentailed. You might venture a carefully neutral opinion. He seemed pleasant enough. The debriefing will continue, a strategic analysis of every word and gesture. Was his interest genuine? Are his prospects as good as they say? Is he a suitable candidate to be invited to a family dinner? The next stage in the courtship process. The entire visit has been a test for both him and for you. He has been auditioning for the role of your husband, and you have been auditioning for the role of his respectable, accomplished, and appropriately indifferent future wife. Courtship is the most important game you'll ever play. It's a game of strategy, concealment, and immense social pressure. It's a bit like chess, but with more tea and a much higher chance of ending up married to someone you barely know. Your greatest asset in this game is your reputation, and your greatest weapon is your ability to conceal your true feelings. To show eagerness is to show weakness, to lower your value. And so, you must hide your heart, keep your thoughts to yourself, and play your part with the cool, detached skill of a master strategist until the prize of a suitable marriage is finally and safely won. The last of your afternoon calls is complete. You have successfully played your part in the intricate, whispering game of Victorian courtship, a performance of perfect, polite indifference. The carriage ride home is a brief respite, a moment to let the serene mask slip in the privacy of the cushioned interior. But your day of social labor is far from over. In many ways, the true test, the main event, is still to come. You are to attend a formal dinner party this evening, and this requires a second, even more elaborate transformation. The formal dinner party is the absolute pinnacle of Victorian social life. It is a far more significant and revealing event than the brief, formulaic morning call. It is an arena where your family's wealth, your own beauty and accomplishments, and your intimate knowledge of the social code are all on full display for several hours. A mistake made at a dinner party, a breach of etiquette witnessed by a dozen influential members of society, can be far more damaging than a clumsy afternoon visit. The stakes are higher, and your preparation must be flawless. Upon returning home, you retreat to your chamber. The modest, gray wool day dress you have been wearing is now entirely inappropriate. Evening requires a completely different uniform. And so, the entire laborious process of dressing begins all over again. Changing for dinner is a 2-hour process that requires at least one servant and the structural integrity of a well-built bridge. Sarah, your maid, helps you to unbutton the day dress and navigate your way out of the great cage crinoline. You are, for a brief moment, back in your chemise and corset. Sarah may even take this opportunity to pull the laces of your corset a little tighter for the evening silhouette, a final, breathtaking cinch of your waist. Now comes the evening gown. It is a far more magnificent and revealing creation than your day dress. The fabrics are richer, more luxurious. It might be made of shimmering silk, heavy, lustrous satin, or deep, plush velvet. The colors are deeper and more vibrant, a sapphire blue, a ruby red, and emerald green, colors that will come alive in the warm, golden glow of gaslight and candlelight. The most dramatic difference is the cut of the bodice. While your day dress had a high, modest neckline that covered you to the throat, the evening gown is daringly low cut. The fashionable style is an off-the-shoulder Bertha neckline, a wide, rounder straight cut that exposes your neck, your throat, and the pale, smooth expanse of your shoulders and collarbones. The off-the-shoulder evening gown is considered daring. It reveals the most scandalous part of a lady's body, her collarbone. This is a deliberate and calculated display, a chance to show off the prized, pale skin that you have so carefully protected from the sun. The contrast between the high-necked modesty of the day and the low-necked display of the evening is a key part of the fashion language of your time. The gown is extravagantly decorated. The Bertha collar itself might be trimmed with a deep flounce of expensive, handmade lace. The skirt, which is just as wide as your day dress, might be adorned with ruched panels, silk ribbons, or clusters of artificial flowers. The entire garment is a testament to your family's wealth, a walking advertisement of the fact that they can afford such expensive materials and so many hours of a skilled seamstress's labor. Sarah helps you into this magnificent creation. It is heavy, the sheer weight of the fabric a constant presence. She once again undertakes the painstaking task of fastening the dozens of hooks or buttons up your back. You are now encased in your evening armor, a shimmering, rustling, and deeply restrictive second skin. But the transformation is not yet complete. You must now attend to your hair. The magnificent evening gown requires an equally magnificent hairstyle. The simple, neat styles of the daytime are not grand enough for the evening. You now sit at your dressing table while Sarah begins the long and intricate process of sculpting your hair. An evening coiffure is a work of art, a complex construction that can take an hour or more to complete. The popular style of the 1850s requires your hair to be parted perfectly in the center, then smoothed down with a pomade or hair oil until it gleams. The sides are often swept down over your ears and then gathered with the rest of your hair into a large, intricate arrangement at the back of your head. This might be a complex knot of braids, a low-slung chignon, or a cascade of carefully constructed sausage curls that fall gracefully onto your neck. If your own hair is not thick or long enough to create such a voluminous style, It is common and perfectly acceptable to supplement it with false hair pieces. Sarah might have a box containing extra braids, switches, and pads of horsehair, which are skillfully integrated with your own hair to add the necessary bulk and complexity. The final creation is then decorated. Silk ribbons matching the color of your gown might be woven through the braids. A string of pearls could be artfully draped around a bun, or a cluster of delicate, artificial flowers. Wax orange blossoms were a particular favorite for young, unmarried ladies, might be pinned just above your ear. While this is happening, you might refresh your face. The flickering, forgiving glow of gaslight and candlelight is much kinder than the harsh, honest light of day. This allows for a slightly more liberal, though still subtle, application of cosmetics. You might add a light dusting of pearl or rice powder to your nose to prevent an unladylike shine, and perhaps reapply a touch of your discreet blush to your cheeks and lips to restore the youthful glow that may have faded over the course of the long day. Finally, after hours of preparation, you are ready. You, your mother, and your father gather in the entrance hall. You perform a final inspection of each other's appearance in a large mirror. Every detail must be perfect. The family carriage is called, and the footman holds the door open. The process of entering the carriage is a logistical challenge. You must carefully gather the vast fabric of your crinoline, turning sideways to navigate the narrow doorway without crushing the delicate steel cage beneath. The carriage ride through the London night is a journey into another world. The familiar gray city of the daytime has been transformed. The streets are illuminated by the warm, golden, and sometimes eerie glow of thousands of gaslights. The grand facades of the townhouses are a patchwork of light and deep shadow. The sound of horses' hooves and iron-shod wheels clattering on the cobblestones is the dominant sound. You might catch a glimpse in the darker alleyways of the other London, the world of the poor, a world of shadows and hardship that exists just beyond the edges of your own brightly lit reality. Your arrival at your host's home is the first great performance of the evening. The quality of your carriage, the matching, immaculate uniforms or liveries of your coachman and footman, and the health and spirit of your horses are all on display for the other arriving guests and the curious onlookers on the street. It is a silent but powerful declaration of your family's wealth and social standing, an announcement of your importance before you have even said a single word. A footman opens your carriage door, and you are helped out onto the pavement. You ascend the steps to the house, the front door of which is opened by a stern-looking butler. You enter the brightly lit entrance hall and hand your cloaks to a servant. Then, you proceed to the entrance of the drawing room, where the guests are assembling before dinner. The butler, in a loud, formal, and stentorian voice, announces your arrival to the entire room. Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild, and Miss Clara Fairchild. Every head turns to watch you as you enter and make your way to the hostess to pay your respects. After all the guests have arrived and have had a suitable amount of time for polite, pre-dinner conversation, the butler announces that dinner is served. This signals the beginning of another complex ritual, the procession to the dining room. The host offers his arm to the lady of the highest rank, the guest of honor, and leads the way. The hostess then takes the arm of the highest-ranking gentleman. The other guests follow in a strict, descending order of social precedence, a carefully choreographed parade of status. You now enter the dining room, and here you face the single greatest source of anxiety for any Victorian hostess, and the most explicit map of the social hierarchy, the seating plan. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. The placement of guests at a formal dinner table was a matter of supreme and deadly seriousness. The hostess spends a week planning the seating chart. It's more complicated than a military campaign, and a single mistake can cause just as many casualties to her social life. The rules are incredibly complex. The host and hostess sit at the head and foot of the long, gleaming mahogany table. The most important female guest is seated to the right of the host. The most important male guest is seated to the right of the hostess. The second most important guests are seated to their left. The rest of the guests are then arranged down the length of the table in a descending order of rank, with the sexes always alternated. Husbands and wives are never seated together. It was assumed they had enough of each other's company at home. To get this right, a hostess had to be a master of the intricate science of precedence. She had to know if a duke outranked a marquis, if the younger son of an earl was more important than a baronet, if a bishop trumped a general. A mistake, a perceived slight in the seating order, could cause a bitter social feud that could last for years. To avoid any embarrassing confusion, each place setting is marked with a quirky and elegant innovation, a small, handwritten place card, which tells you exactly where you are to sit. Historians continue to debate the emotional impact of this rigid, hierarchical ritual. Did it create a sense of social order and security? A world where everyone knew their place and the rules were clear, thus reducing social friction? Or did it foster a culture of intense anxiety, jealousy, and social competition, turning every dinner party into a public battlefield for status, where your worth as a human being was measured by your proximity to the host? You find your name on a beautifully calligraphed card and take your designated seat. You unfold the starched linen napkin and place it in your lap. The long, elaborate, and deeply perilous performance of the dinner party is about to begin. You have found your place at the vast, candle-lit dining table. A liveried footman has just placed a steaming bowl of soup before you. The performance is about to enter its most dangerous and intricate phase. The dinner party is not a meal. It is a social examination, a high-stakes test of your breeding, your knowledge, and your self-control. Every move you make, every word you utter, and every utensil you touch will be observed and judged. This is the minefield of Victorian manners. Your first challenge is the bewildering array of silverware laid out before you. You are faced with more silverware than a pirate's treasure chest. The rule is to start from the outside and work your way in. Pray you don't have more courses than you have forks. To your right are a series of knives and a soup spoon. To your left are a series of forks. Above your plate, there might be a smaller spoon and fork, reserved for dessert. This glittering forest of silver is a deliberate test. An aristocrat, born to this world, will know instinctively which utensil to use for which course. A newcomer, an outsider, will be immediately revealed by a moment of hesitation or, worse, a clumsy error. The soup has arrived. You pick up the large, round-bowled spoon on the outermost right. The rules for its use are precise. You must dip the spoon into the soup, moving it away from you, not towards you. You sip the soup silently from the side of the spoon, never from the tip. And you must never, ever slurp. To make a noise while eating is a social sin of the highest order. When the soup bowls are cleared, a fish course is served. Now, you must use the outermost fork on your left and the specific, often strangely shaped, fish knife on your right. The tines of your fork must, at all times, point downwards. You use your knife to gently separate a small piece of fish and the back of your fork to lift it to your mouth. This requires a certain dexterity, a balancing act that you have practiced since childhood. The main course arrives, perhaps a roasted joint of beef. You now move to the next set of utensils, the large dinner knife and fork. Again, the fork remains with its tines pointing down. You use your knife to cut a single small piece of meat, and then you use your fork to spear it and lift it to your mouth. To cut all your meat into small pieces at once, as a child might do, is considered hopelessly vulgar. Each bite is a separate, deliberate, and graceful operation. The goal of eating is to look as if you have no actual interest in food. You are a delicate, ethereal being who is merely sampling the cuisine for intellectual curiosity. You must take tiny, bird-like bites. You must chew slowly, silently, and with your mouth firmly closed. You must never speak with food in your mouth. You must appear to be engaged in a delicate, artistic performance, not the base, animalistic act of refueling your body. Navigating the food itself is a challenge. How does one eat peas with the back of a downward-facing fork? The technique is to use your knife to gently crush the peas and then use the resulting mash to adhere a few of them to the back of your fork. It is a complex and often frustrating maneuver. To fail, to have your peas roll ignominiously across your plate, is a moment of small but intense social embarrassment. Every course presents a new challenge, a new opportunity to either prove your mastery of the code or to reveal your ignorance. Navigating the treacherous world of forks and fish knives is only the first part of the challenge. An even greater and more perilous test is the dinner table conversation. Like the meal itself, it is governed by a set of rigid and deeply strange rules, the most important of which is a practice known as turning the table. This is a mainstream historical fact of formal Victorian dining. Your conversation is not a free and spontaneous exchange. It is a highly structured and choreographed affair. For the first half of the dinner, through the soup and the fish and into the main course, you are expected to speak exclusively to the gentleman seated on your right. You must politely and completely ignore the person seated on your left. To turn to your left before the designated moment would be a catastrophic breach of etiquette, a social error of the highest magnitude. So, you engage in a pleasant but entirely superficial conversation with your dinner partner on the right. You discuss the safe and pre-approved topics, the weather, a recent concert, the beauty of the floral centerpiece. You are a master of the art of saying nothing of consequence, of filling the time with a gentle and unceasing stream of agreeable platitudes. Then, at a specific point in the meal, usually after the main course has been cleared and before dessert is served, the signal is given. The hostess, from her position at the head of the table, will catch the eye of the gentleman seated to her right, with whom she has been conversing all evening. She will give him a slight, almost imperceptible nod, and then she will deliberately and visibly turn to address the gentleman seated on her left. This is the moment, like a flock of birds turning in perfect, silent unison. Every single guest at the table is expected to see and obey this silent command. You must now find a polite and graceful way to end your conversation with the man on your right. You might say, "It has been such a pleasure to discuss the novels of Mr. Thackeray with you." Then, you turn. At the signal from the hostess, you must abruptly stop talking to the person on your right and start talking to the person on your left. It's a bit like a very slow, very polite game of musical chairs. For the remainder of the dinner, through the dessert and the fruit course, you will speak only to this new partner. The logic behind this bizarre ritual was, in its own way, quite considerate. It was a mechanism to ensure that no guest was left trapped for the entire 2-hour meal in a tedious or difficult conversation. It also guaranteed that everyone had the opportunity to socialize with at least 2 different people. It was a system of enforced social circulation, a way of managing the conversational flow of the entire table with a single, silent gesture from the hostess. The topics of your conversation remain, of course, within the strict boundaries of the safe and the impersonal. You do not discuss money, politics, or religion. You do not ask personal questions. You do not offer any strong or controversial opinions. The entire performance is one of supreme and almost superhuman self-control, a demonstration that you are a master of the complex and deeply unforgiving rules of the Victorian dinner table. Beyond the grand choreography of turning the table, there exists a whole universe of smaller, even more specific rules that govern how you must interact with your food. A quirky and revealing set of these rules applies to the eating of fruit, which is often served as one of the final courses. To be presented with a perfect, right pair is to be presented with a final, difficult test. You must never, under any circumstances, simply pick it up and bite into it. Such a direct, rustic act would be a sign of appalling manners. Instead, you must use the specific fruit knife and fork that have been placed above your plate. You spear the pear with your fork to hold it steady, and then, using the small, sharp knife, you carefully peel it. Once peeled, you slice the pear into small, delicate, bite-sized pieces, all while it is still on the plate. You then eat each piece individually with your fork. This complex and rather inefficient procedure is a performance of supreme elegance and self-restraint. This web of rules, so complex and often arbitrary, is the subject of a significant scholarly debate. Historians of etiquette argue about the true purpose of this elaborate dining code. Was it a genuine reflection of a society that was deeply concerned with ideas of hygiene, refinement, and aesthetic grace? Or was it primarily a weapon of social exclusion, a constantly changing set of secret passwords designed to be so difficult to master that it could be used by the established upper class to identify and ostracize the nouveau riche? The newly wealthy industrialists who had the money for a grand dinner party, but not the inherited knowledge of how to eat a pear correctly. As the final course is cleared away, you can allow yourself a small, internal sigh of relief. You have survived. You have used the correct forks in the correct order. You have eaten your meal in tiny, silent bites. You have navigated the treacherous currents of the timed conversation. You have successfully demonstrated your complete mastery of the intricate, unforgiving, and deeply revealing rituals of the Victorian dinner table. The meal is over, but the evening and its complex social performances are not. The final dessert plate has been cleared away, the last crumb of the fruit tart consumed. You have survived the social and culinary minefield of the Victorian dinner. But the evening, and its long series of carefully choreographed rituals, is not yet over. Now comes a moment that starkly defines the separate and unequal worlds of men and women in your society. It is time for the ladies to withdraw. There is no loud announcement, no formal instruction. The signal is a subtle and silent one, a piece of social telepathy understood by everyone of your class. The hostess, from her position at the head of the table, will catch the eye of the highest-ranking lady present, perhaps a duchess or an elderly countess. She will give a slight, almost imperceptible nod. That is all it takes. The duchess will then place her napkin on the table and begin to rise. As if connected by an invisible thread, every other lady at the table, including you and your mother, immediately does the same. You rise in a rustle of silk and satin, a collective, graceful movement. The men, who were in the middle of their conversations, all fall silent and also rise to their feet, standing respectfully as the female contingent prepares to depart. The host moves to open the dining room door. The procession is an echo of the one that entered the room hours ago, but in reverse. The hostess leads the way, followed by the ladies in the same strict order of social precedence. You do not look at your male dinner companions as you leave. You might offer a slight, general bow to the room, your expression one of serene and modest composure. You file out of the dining room, leaving the men behind in a world of dark wood, polished silver, and the lingering smells of roasted meat and wine. The heavy dining room door closes behind you with a soft, definitive click. A barrier has just been erected. The evening has now been formally split into two distinct, gendered spheres. This ritual of the ladies withdrawing after dinner is a mainstream historical fact, a standard and deeply ingrained feature of upper-class British social life that would persist for generations. For the next hour or so, the sexes will be completely segregated, each group free to engage in the conversations and activities deemed appropriate for their gender. You and the other ladies now proceed to the drawing room, the same room where the afternoon calls were held. But its atmosphere has now changed. It is, for this brief period, an exclusively female space. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn, the fire is burning brightly, and the gas lights have been turned up, casting a warm, golden glow over the room. It is a sanctuary of femininity, a private world where the rules, while still present, are subtly different from the mixed company of the dinner table. You are now in the second act of the evening's performance, a scene with an all-female cast. You and the other ladies settle into the comfortable, feminine world of the drawing room. The oppressive formality of the dining table has dissipated, and the atmosphere, while still polite, is noticeably more relaxed. A parlor maid enters with a heavy silver tray laden with a fine porcelain tea service, a coffee pot, and delicate cups and saucers. The quiet ritual of pouring and serving the hot beverages begins. Now, the conversation can flow more freely, but it remains within a very specific, gendered channel. The topics that were forbidden at the dinner table, politics, business, the law, are still absent. But the conversation is no longer a sterile performance of agreeing with a male dinner partner. This is the inner sanctum of the female social world, and the talk turns to matters that are considered the exclusive domain of your sex. You might discuss children, the progress of their lessons with the governess, a recent bout of measles, the arrangements for an upcoming birthday party. You might discuss household management, the perennial difficulty of finding a good cook, the rising price of wax candles, the best way to remove a wine stain from a linen tablecloth. Fashion is, of course, a primary and endlessly fascinating topic. The dresses worn by the other ladies at dinner are now subject to a thorough and often merciless critique. The quality of the silk, the cut of the bodice, the tastefulness of the lace trim, every detail is noted and evaluated. And, of course, there is gossip. It is not the coarse, loud slander of a tavern. It is a delicate, subtle, and incredibly powerful exchange of social information. It is in these quiet, after-dinner conversations that reputations are made and broken. A quiet word about a young man's gambling debts, A concerned murmur about a young lady's overly flirtatious behavior. This is the currency of the female social world. It is here that the groundwork for the next generation of marriages is laid, that potential matches are discussed and evaluated, and that the intricate web of social connections is maintained and repaired. This is not idle chatter. It is the serious and vital work of managing the social universe. While you are engaged in this world of tea, fashion, and subtle social management, a very different scene is unfolding back in the dining room, where the men have been left to their own devices. The moment the door closes behind the last departing lady, the atmosphere in the room transforms. The formal restraint of the dinner party dissolves, replaced by the loud, boisterous, and exclusively masculine camaraderie of the after-dinner ritual. The servants clear the white linen tablecloth, revealing the dark, gleaming, polished mahogany of the table itself. Decanters of heavy, fortified wine, dark, ruby red port, and amber-colored sherry are placed before the host. Boxes of expensive, imported cigars are opened and passed around the table. Soon, the air, which a moment ago was filled with the delicate scent of dessert, is thick with the sweet, heavy aroma of port and the pungent, blue-gray smoke of cigars. This ritual has its own set of quirky and unbreachable rules. The passing of the port decanter, for instance, is a matter of strict etiquette. The host will pour a glass for himself, and then he must immediately pass the decanter to the gentleman seated on his left. The decanter must always travel in a clockwise direction around the table, and it must never be stopped on its journey. To hold onto the decanter, or to pass it in the wrong direction, is a serious social blunder. With the women gone, the conversation shifts instantly to all the topics that were forbidden just minutes before. The men are now free to engage in the robust and passionate discourse of their public lives. They will debate politics, discussing the latest bill before Parliament or the Queen's foreign policy with a loud and fiery passion. They will talk business, sharing insights on the stock market, a new railway venture, or the price of cotton. Informal deals and powerful alliances are often forged in the cigar smoke-filled haze of these after-dinner conversations. The talk might turn to sport, the details of a recent fox hunt, a day of grouse shooting, or the prospects of a prized racehorse. The language becomes coarser, the jokes more risque, and the laughter louder and more unrestrained. This is the private world of men, a space where they are free from the perceived constraints of female sensibility. This after-dinner separation is the perfect physical embodiment of the Victorian ideology of separate spheres. You, the woman, are the angel of the private, domestic sphere, while the man is the master of the public world of politics, commerce, and intellectual debate. The closed dining room door is a powerful, symbolic barrier between these two distinct worlds. After a suitable interval, perhaps half an hour, perhaps a full hour, a servant will enter the drawing room and quietly inform the hostess that the gentlemen are ascending. The atmosphere shifts once more. The relaxed, exclusively female conversation comes to an end. You and the other ladies compose yourselves as the men, smelling faintly of cigar smoke and port, file into the room. The two separate spheres now merge again into a single, formal social space. The evening now enters its final phase, which is often centered around a display of the accomplishments of the young, unmarried ladies. The hostess might approach you, as you are known to have a talent for the piano. "My dear Clara, She will say with a warm smile, "Would you be so kind as to favor the company with a piece of music?" This is not a casual request. It is a public test, and your response is governed by a strict and unwritten script. You must never, ever agree immediately. To stand up and say, "Yes, I would love to," would be a sign of shocking vanity and forwardness. You must perform a ritual of modest refusal. "Oh, you were too kind to ask, Lady Ashworth." You might reply, looking down at your hands, "But I am so dreadfully out of practice. I am sure I would only bore the company. Perhaps Miss Eleanor would play? Her skill is so much greater than mine." The hostess, playing her part in this little drama, will of course insist. "Nonsense, my dear," she will say. "We would all be so delighted to hear you." After a suitable amount of this polite back and forth, having demonstrated your profound modesty and your reluctance to be the center of attention, you must finally, reluctantly, agree. You move to the piano, your movements graceful and composed. Being asked to play the piano is a high-stakes social test. You have to be good enough to be impressive, but not so good that people think you actually enjoy it. It's a very fine line between accomplished lady and show off. You select a piece that is pleasant, demonstrates your technical skill, but is not too long or overly emotional. To play with too much fiery passion would be as unladylike as playing badly. As you play, the room falls into a polite silence. Your suitor, Mr. Fairchild, watches you intently. This is the culmination of your mother's earlier comments about your musical talent. You are now providing the proof. This is a key part of your courtship. You are demonstrating your value as a future wife, a woman who can bring culture and refined entertainment to her own drawing room. When you finish, you are met with a wave of gentle, restrained applause. You must not beam with pride. You simply offer a small, modest curtsy to the room, and then you quietly return to your seat. Your performance is complete. After your successful and modestly performed piece of music, the formal part of the evening's entertainment is over. The atmosphere in the drawing room relaxes further. The men rejoin the ladies, bringing with them the faint, manly aromas of cigar smoke and impending political arguments. Guests might now break into smaller, more fluid groups for general conversation, or the hostess might suggest a simple parlor game, like a hand of cards. This entire, highly structured after-dinner ritual is the subject of a significant scholarly debate among feminist historians. What was the true function of the ladies' withdrawal? Was it a clear and deliberate act of gender segregation, designed to marginalize women and exclude them from the important conversations about politics and business that were taking place in the dining room? In this view, it was a way of reinforcing the patriarchal order, a ritual that underlined the separation of the male public sphere and the female domestic sphere. Or was it, in a more subtle way, a source of female power? The other side of the debate argues that the all-female drawing room was a crucial space where women could create their own networks, share vital social information, and manage the intricate world of matchmaking and reputation, free from male oversight. In this view, the withdrawal was not a banishment, but an opportunity for women to wield their own unique and powerful form of social influence. As the evening winds down, the clock on the mantelpiece strikes a respectable hour, perhaps 11 o'clock. This is the unspoken signal that the party is over. The highest-ranking guests will make the first move to depart, and the other guests will follow their lead. You and your family say your formal goodbyes to the host and hostess, thanking them for a delightful evening. The evening ends at a respectable hour. A successful party is one where no one has expressed a genuine emotion or said anything memorable. It is a triumph of politeness. You are escorted to the door, and the footman calls for your carriage. You sink into the plush seats, the door closing on the warm, bright house, and you are once again enveloped in the cool darkness of the London night. The long, exhausting performance is finally over. You can loosen the tight grip of your perfect posture and let out a genuine, unladylike sigh of relief. You have navigated another evening in society, a complex ritual of gendered separation and modest performance. And amidst all this formality, there were still a few precious moments for the most subtle and secret of all interactions, the silent, coded game that we will explore next. The formal part of the evening is over. The last polite applause for the piano performance has faded, and the guests have settled into a state of quiet, respectable socializing. The air in the drawing room is a soft murmur of low voices, the gentle clinking of teacups, and the rustle of silk gowns. It is in this final, less structured phase of the evening, amidst the apparent calm, that the most subtle, most dangerous, and most exciting of all Victorian social games is played. This is the art of flirtation. You must first understand that Victorian flirtation bears no resemblance to the open, verbal, and often physical flirtation of a future age. It is not about witty banter, playful teasing, or a casual touch on the arm. Such behavior would be shockingly forward and would instantly ruin your reputation. Instead, it is a silent and almost invisible conversation, a high-stakes game of coded glances, subtle gestures, and carefully chosen, neutral words, all conducted under the ever-present, watchful eye of your mother and the other chaperones in the room. Your mother is your guardian, your strategist, but she is also your jailer. Her presence, seated just a few feet away, is a constant reminder of the rules. She is there to ensure that any interaction you have with a potential suitor, like Mr. Fairchild, remains entirely within the strict bounds of propriety. Every word you say, he can hear. Every look you exchange, she can see. This constant surveillance is what makes the game so challenging and so thrilling. It forces all communication into a secret, coded channel that only the two participants can truly understand. The primary language of this secret channel is the glance. You have spent your entire life learning to control your expressions, to maintain a serene and modest mask. But your eyes can be taught to speak when your mouth cannot. You might be engaged in a polite, general conversation with a group of people. Mr. Fairchild makes a clever, educated comment. As the others in the group smile or nod, you allow your eyes to meet his for a single, fleeting second longer than is strictly necessary. In that second, you might allow a hint of genuine warmth or amusement into your expression before you modestly lower your gaze back to your teacup. This tiny, almost imperceptible moment is a powerful signal. It is a spark of encouragement, a silent acknowledgement that you have noticed him, that you were impressed by him. It is a completely deniable gesture. If accused of being forward, you could simply claim that your eyes happened to meet by chance. But to him, a man who is trained to read these subtle cues, your glance is a shout in a silent room. He now knows that his attentions are not unwelcome, and he is emboldened to continue his pursuit, all without a single improper word being spoken. The entire romance is a silent film, and you are its most expressive star. Once this initial, silent connection has been made through a series of stolen glances, you might progress to the next, slightly more daring stage of flirtation, the coded conversation. The words you exchange are, on the surface, entirely proper and respectable. You will speak of art, of literature, of music, but these neutral subjects become the secret vessels for your true, unspoken feelings. They are a proxy language, a way to talk about your hearts by pretending to talk about something else entirely. Let us imagine that you, your mother, and Mr. Fairchild are seated in the drawing room. Your mother, playing her part, might ask the young man if he has read the latest volume of poetry by the celebrated Mr. Alfred Tennyson. Mr. Fairchild replies that he has, and that he found it most excellent. He then turns his head slightly towards you and adds, I was particularly struck by one of the shorter love poems. I found it expressed the nature of noble sentiment most movingly. This is not a simple piece of literary criticism. It is a message. By praising a love poem and by using the words noble sentiment, he is signaling to you that he is a man of deep and honorable feelings, that he is capable of a romantic and devoted heart. He is, in a completely deniable way, talking about his own capacity for love. Your response is equally coded. You must not appear too enthusiastic, but you must acknowledge the signal. You might look up from your needlework and say, indeed, I thought the poem captured the ideal of true devotion most beautifully. You are not speaking of your own feelings. You are not accepting his unspoken offer. You are simply agreeing on an abstract literary level that devotion is a fine quality. You have just had a successful 5-second conversation about the nature of your potential feelings for each other, all under the guise of discussing poetry, and all under the approving gaze of your mother, who is simply pleased that this handsome suitor has such good and respectable literary taste. This same technique can be applied to any subject. He might admire a painting on the wall depicting a knight serving his lady and comment on the virtue of loyalty. He is talking about himself. He might praise the passion and devotion in a piece of music. He is talking about his own heart. The entire conversation is a subtextual dance, a game of using impersonal subjects to reveal the most personal of feelings, all while maintaining a perfect, unbreachable wall of propriety. Beyond the subtleties of coded conversation, the structured environment of a parlor game provides another sanctioned arena for this delicate flirtation. After the musical performance, your hostess might suggest a hand of whist, a popular and intellectually demanding card game. You might, by a seemingly happy accident of the hostess's design, find yourself partnered with Mr. Fairchild. As partners, you have a legitimate reason to confer, to exchange quiet, strategic whispers about the game, to share a conspiratorial smile after a well-played trick. The game itself provides a perfect cover for the real game that is being played, the game of courtship. Your brief, focused interactions are entirely proper, but they are also charged with an unspoken energy, a sense of shared purpose and connection that would be impossible to achieve in a more open conversation. But perhaps the most beautiful, most elaborate, and most quirky of all the secret romantic languages is the language of flowers. This is a fascinating historical tidbit. The Victorian era saw a massive craze for florography, a complex and widely understood code in which every flower and plant was assigned a specific meaning. A carefully arranged bouquet was not just a pretty gift. It was a detailed and nuanced letter, a silent declaration of feeling that could be sent and received in plain sight. A suitor like Mr. Fairchild would not send you a large, ostentatious bouquet. Instead, he might have his footman deliver a small, handheld nosegay, or tussy-mussy. You would receive it, and then, in the privacy of your room, you would read it. Every single flower would have been chosen with care. A red rose, of course, speaks of passionate love. A white lily signifies purity. A sprig of lavender means devotion, while a pansy, from the French word penser, means thoughts. He is thinking of you. A yellow rose, however, could be a dangerous message of jealousy or the fading of affection. A bouquet containing lavender, pansies, and a single perfect red rose would be a thrilling and deeply romantic declaration. A secret message that says, "My devoted thoughts are full of a passionate love for you." Your response would be equally silent. If you carry his bouquet with you on your afternoon walk the next day, you have signaled your acceptance of his message. If the bouquet is left to wilt in your room, you have sent a gentle but clear rejection. It is the most beautiful and poetic of all the secret languages of your time, a way to speak of the most profound emotions through the silent, fragrant medium of flowers. All of these secret, silent languages, the glances, the coded conversations, the parlor games, the flowers, all take place under the constant, watchful gaze of the ever-present chaperone. The institution of the chaperone is a mainstream historical fact, the absolute cornerstone of respectable Victorian courtship. A young, unmarried lady of your class is never, ever to be left alone in a room with a man who is not a close blood relative. To do so would be to cause a scandal of the highest order and to ruin her reputation irrevocably. Your chaperone is usually your mother. It might also be a married older sister, a widowed aunt, or, in some cases, a hired, respectable older woman. Her job is to be a living, breathing barrier, a guardian of propriety. She is the silent third party in every conversation, the gooseberry, who ensures that all talk remains safe and that no physical boundaries are ever crossed. Her presence is a constant, physical manifestation of the rules of society, a reminder that your courtship is not a private affair between two people, but a public negotiation between two families. This entire highly restrained and supervised system of courtship has been the subject of a long and fascinating scholarly debate. Historians who study the emotional lives of the Victorians argue about its true effect on the human heart. On one hand, was it a deeply frustrating and repressive system that prevented any genuine, authentic connection from forming between two people before they were bound together for life in marriage? Did this system, with its focus on propriety and surfaces, lead to countless unhappy marriages between virtual strangers who only discovered their fundamental incompatibility after the vows had been spoken? Or does the opposite hold true? The other side of the debate argues that the very difficulty of communication, the immense social barriers, and the need for such extreme subtlety actually serve to heighten the romantic tension and make the entire experience more powerful and meaningful. In a world where a touch of the hand is forbidden, a single shared glance across a crowded room becomes an event of explosive emotional significance. Because open declarations are impossible, the coded language of poetry and flowers becomes invested with a power and a poignancy that a straightforward conversation could never have. In this view, the repression did not extinguish romance. It channeled it, intensified it, and made the smallest victory, the smallest sign of requited love, feel like a monumental triumph. Whether the experience is one of romantic tension or quiet frustration, The game of courtship is played out within these rigid boundaries. The evening winds down. The clock on the mantelpiece strikes 11, the respectable hour for departure. The carriages are called. You and your family take your leave from the host and hostess with a final round of formal, polite remarks. This is your last chance for a significant gesture. As Mr. Fairchild bows over your hand, the touch of your gloved fingers might linger for a fraction of a second longer than is necessary. A final, meaningful glance is exchanged, and then you are gone. The entire evening is a triumph of propriety. A successful party is one where absolutely nothing interesting or memorable was said aloud, but a whole novel's worth of drama was communicated through sidelong glances and the strategic placement of a teacup. You have successfully navigated another social evening. Your reward is that you get to go home and do it all again tomorrow. It is the glorious, endless cycle of the London season. As you sink back into the plush seats of your carriage, the door closing on the gaslit world of the party, you can finally, truly, let out a breath you feel you have been holding for 6 hours. The mask can be dropped. The long, exhausting performance is over. You have lived a day in the life of a Victorian lady, a day that began in the cold and the coal smoke, and was defined by a relentless series of rituals. You were encased in a corset and a steel cage. You navigated the 15-minute combat of the morning call, speaking in a language of polite nothingness. You filled your day with virtuous, passionless accomplishments. You endured the tense scrutiny of a potential suitor, hiding your feelings behind a mask of serene indifference. You transformed yourself again for the evening and survived the social minefield of the dinner table. You withdrew to the world of women and then rejoined the men for a final, modest performance. And through it all, you played the silent, secret game of flirtation. It is a life lived in a beautiful, ornate, and suffocatingly small gilded cage. And now, as the carriage rattles to a stop before your own quiet home, our journey too comes to its end. You can leave the gaslit drawing rooms and the restrictive social codes behind. Let go of the feeling of the tight corset around your ribs, the immense weight of the crinoline, and the constant, draining pressure of the performance. The watchful eyes of the chaperones can no longer see you. You are free. Release the burden of that carefully constructed world, with its silent glances and its unspoken rules. Let the memory of that rigid life dissolve into the soft, quiet comfort of your own bed, in your own time. Feel the simple, uncomplicated pleasure of a deep, easy breath. There are no more rules to follow, no more parts to play. There is only the gentle, peaceful rhythm of the here and now, a soft and steady current to carry you away from the complexities of the past. Allow your mind to grow still, your body to grow heavy, as you drift into a deep and truly restful sleep.